Hello, my sweet summer children. I'm back with the juice. We're here to talk about the finale of House of the Dragon, but more importantly, we are going to talk about Nettles, Rhaena, Sheepstealer, book canon, what happened in season 2, and why was Alys Rivers crying in the season 2 finale of House of the Dragon. You're not going to believe why Alys Rivers was crying. She was crying because 2 episodes are missing from this season. She was crying because Rhaena didn't kiss. Actually, it was because Daemon didn't kiss. Just kidding. She's crying because there weren't enough battles. Alys Rivers is crying because the Nettles was cut from House of the Dragon. And I'm not kidding. So let's talk about it. I loved season 2 of House of the Dragon. Was it perfect? No.
Brother,
Is it the best thing on TV right now? Absolutely yes. One of the things I hated the most was Nettles potentially being cut from the series. Nettles is one of my favorite characters from the books. When I did my prep for House of the Dragon when it was first announced, she is one of the first characters I did a video on. And I'm not going to lie, I was heartbroken when information started to leak saying that she was being merged with Rhaena and that Rhaena would claim Sheepstealer. When I actually saw Rhaena run into the Vale after finding out a dragon was there, I was even more heartbroken.
give me something for the pain and let me die.
But did this make the season bad? No, it did not make the season bad. Now, personal feelings aside, let's talk about season 2 real quick. I definitely think this season needed 10 episodes to feel complete. It felt like episode 9 was supposed to be the Battle of the Gullet. And it felt like episode 10 was supposed to be the aftermath of the Battle of the Gullet. But I don't think the showrunners had a choice in this because Sarah Hess, one of the writers, said it wasn't really their choice. Here's what Ryan Condal had to say about the slow season and the Battle of the Gullet. We were trying to give the Gullet, which is arguably the second most anticipated action event of Fire and Blood, trying to give it the time and space that it deserves. And as obviously as anybody that's seen the finale, we are building to that. That event will happen very shortly. In terms of the storytelling of House of the Dragon, based on what we know now, it should be the biggest thing to date that we've pulled off. And we just wanted to have the time and space to do that at a level that it's going to excite and satisfy the fans and the way it's deserved. And we also wanted to build some anticipation toward it. I know everybody wants this to come out every summer. It's just that the show is so complex that we're really making multiple feature films every season. So I apologize for the wait, but we're going to pull off a hell of a win with the Battle of the Gullet in the future. But the way some of these people are reacting to the finale, y'all are dragging it. Y'all are dragging it. It's one thing to have valid critiques and complaints, but what goes on now is beyond that. So Alys could be crying simply because she's about to face a very different kind of man next season, and she can see the future, so she sees it. She sees what she's about to face. But I think it's something different. I think Alys is crying, and Daemon's arc at Harrenhal shows us, well, me at least, that the showrunners know their shit. The thing that went on with Alys Rivers this season and Alys Rivers crying, I think these are parts of Nettles' story that were given to Alys. And here's why. So let me explain why Alys Rivers was crying. So in the books, the dragon Sheepstealer was tamed by a small brown girl named Nettles. She brought him fresh slaughtered sheep every morning. He got used to her and expected her. And Nettles has a very interesting relationship with Daemon Targaryen in the books. If you watched my Daemon Greenseer video, I theorized that Nettles was actually a child of the forest, specifically Leaf or a woods witch like Jenny of Oldstones. I laid out all of the evidence for this in that video, and I'll link it below. The relationship between Nettles and Daemon is an interesting one, right? The quotes from the book led people to theorize Nettles was his lover. Nettles was his bastard daughter. I, on the other hand, read the relationship more of a teacher-student relationship. Like Nettles kind of changes him. He helps her with different things, showing her the human ways, like how to brush her hair and how to take a bath. But she helps him grow on a different level. Nettles had a huge impact on Daemon Targaryen, on his character. Daemon is canonically selfish, very selfish. I love him, y'all, but he was selfish. Like, he really was. Something happened in the Riverlands that changed this man. Rhaegar level prophecy shit. Mind you, I'm writing this in 2021, a year before House of the Dragon premiered, and I'm only going off of book evidence and the themes in the universe. So something happened that made this man sacrifice himself. He found something greater than him, something more important than him, something he was willing to die for. In House of the Dragon, this awakening seems to come from Alys Rivers, and it happens a lot sooner than it does in the books. So in the books, this awakening that I feel like he goes through happens like towards the end of his story. So I don't think this awakening can come from Nettles because Nettles has been merged with Rhaena. At least we think. So Ryan Condal did an interview and was asked about cutting Nettles, and this is what he said. Given where we are in the storytelling, I think that's a please stay tuned and keep watching the story. I will say that we love Rhaena as a character, and we've really done a lot of legwork to set her up from the beginning as somebody in this Targaryen household, how powerful an idea it is, how somebody that grows up in this family, even in the time of peace, when you don't have a dragon, it changes how you're identified, even within the family. And how desperate Rhaena is for that sort of self-identification as a dragon rider and is willing to go to fairly dangerous lengths to try to see that realized. I think part of the fun of adapting Fire and Blood is how we interpret the accepted history that these three different historians sometimes argue about and wrote down, and we're not trying to tell the objective truth. We're providing the television version of one objective truth of this history, and anybody who reads the book is free to interpret it however they want to. But there are a lot of paths to interpretation through this, and I think the reign of story as we're seeing it unfold is potentially one of those interesting interpretations we have to offer, and I would just say that we don't do any of this stuff lightly. So it looks like Rhaena is about to claim Sheepstealer, and I'm going to talk about that too. But first, why is Alys Rivers crying? Alys Rivers is very much changed from the book. In the books, there is nothing written about her interacting with Daemon. Matter of fact, it says whatever her powers were, Daemon Targaryen must have been immune to them because there are no reports of anything amiss while Daemon held Harrenhal. But the reports we do get of Alys Rivers from the books, she seems to be associated with R'hllor and not the old gods, but more specifically, she has a lot in common with Melisandre. Like, yes, she does see visions, but these visions come from fire and not weirwoods. Also, it's hinted at that she's much older than she appears, and she uses dark magic to keep herself looking young. And also, I'm not going to spoil it, but it seems she could be a shadowbinder like Melisandre as well. But these elements don't exist in Hot D's version of Alys. So they gave her the aspects of more of a representative of the old gods and the children and the weirwoods. With this, she does some major character development for Daemon that I thought would come from Nettles. So we know that when Daemon and Nettles depart from each other at Maidenpool, Daemon is going to Harrenhal to face Aemon. Nettles flies away towards the Bay of Crabs. So a lot of you all pointed out to me this black goat at Harrenhal, and you said that it kept appearing, reminding you of Nettles. And I think you're right, especially when you pair it with Alys crying and the character development that happens with Daemon at Harrenhal. When Nettles leaves Daemon and Daemon flies to the God's Eye for his part that we learned about in the finale, his showdown with Aemond, this is what it says in the books. Prince Daemon helped Nettles saddle Sheepstealer one last time. It was her custom to feed him each day before she flew. Dragons bend easier to their rider's will when full. That morning she fed him a black ram, the largest in all of Maidenpool. Slitting the ram's throat herself, her riding leathers were stained with blood when she mounted her dragon. Maester Norrin records, and her cheeks were stained with tears. So I think Alys is crying because she's fulfilling the Nettles role in Daemon's story. She's made him face his demons and given him a prophecy that basically portends doom for House Targaryen, but in the deepest darkness comes the dawn. So we see like the life and death and rebirth of dragons. This does not change Daemon's character. He's the same person. His choices are his to make. He has the will to do whatever he wants to do, which brings me to merging Rhaena with the Nettles and making Rhaena the dragon rider of Sheepstealer. So in order for them to merge Nettles with Rhaena, they have to give the conflict that Rhaenyra has with the Nettles to Rhaena. They can't give her the same conflict because that would be weird. Because Rhaenyra is convinced that Nettles is a witch that has Daemon in a love spell, and Rhaenyra basically calls for her head. In the show, Rhaena is sent to the Vale with Tyraxes, Stormcloud, Joffrey, Viserys, and Aegon. In the books, it's just Joffrey and Tyraxes. Aegon and Viserys are Rhaena's blood brothers. She's been raised with them since they've been born. The idea that she would abandon them is really out of character, at least book character for her, because Baela and Rhaena have such a close relationship with Aegon, and it comes into play heavily, especially during the Hour of the Wolf. Rhaena even becomes heir to the Iron Throne, basically because she's not willful and is more tractable than Baela. Like, her entire story in the Vale is very separate from the war. Like, she's in the Vale the whole time. She's enjoying the soft life. Knights are vowing for her favor. She's having her hair brushed and songs sung of her beauty. But since she's being merged with Nettles to set up the conflict between her and Rhaenyra, she has sent Viserys and Aegon to Pentos alone, and she's chasing a wild dragon in the mountains of the Vale. So in the books, Rhaena isn't charged by the queen with protecting Viserys and Aegon like a dragon protects her eggs. She's only protecting Joffrey. In the books, Viserys and Aegon are sent to Pentos by Jace, and their ship is taken by the Triarchy. So to add to the Nettles conflict with Rhaenyra, they have Rhaena betraying her and making her think her son Viserys is dead. And since Stormcloud does not seem rideable and the children are very young, I don't know how it's all going to play out. But Rhaenyra will think at least one of them is dead, and she will pin the blame on Rhaena for leaving them, and she will call for Rhaena's head just as she did with Nettles. I guess this presents an opportunity for Daemon to make up for being a bad parent. He will likely definitely de facto from Rhaenyra to protect his daughter. I don't know, but this seems to have been planned from the beginning. I heard different rumors about casting issues and writing issues, but this seems to have been planned from the beginning. Rhaena claiming a dragon and Rhaena bonding with Daemon, it's set all up in one conversation with Laena in season 1. Laena tells her half the eggs never hatch, and to be a dragon rider, you need to claim that right. And when she whines about Daemon not being a good dad to her, Laena's like, he's trying his best. But in the books, she never gives up on her egg, which is interesting on its own. Her sheer dedication and connection to this egg, because the egg does hatch a pale pink dragon with black horns and a black crest. Rhaena names her dragon Morning. And when you get further into the story, Rhaena having Morning when the Greens have no dragons, and Rhaena being in the Vale allied with Lady Arryn and the Knights of the Vale massing, and Lady Arryn sending to Bravos for ships to bring them to King's Landing, looks a lot more dire. But Rhaena having Morning makes Alicent like freak out, you know? Because now the Blacks have a dragon and they don't. The Blacks' claim looks more legitimate than their own because they don't have any dragons. Lady Jean Arryn is also totally Team Black, so to make her like some cold lady that belittles Rhaena and pushes her to claim a dragon, it's crazy. Like, we've read these books, right? And we love them. But this is the journey I signed up to take, knowing that when books are adaptive, creative changes happen and characters are cut and law of conservation and so on. While I'm upset, once we see how it plays out, only then can we judge, like, is it good? Is it bad? A lot of us that saw the leak over a year ago had wrote it off because Nettles has such a huge impact on the story and different characters in the story. There were rumors circulating that it was Miguel Sapochnik's idea, that George Martin vetoed it. Like, season 2 had to be rewritten, and then there were casting issues and scenes were cut. There was writer strikes. But honestly, I don't think this was an idea that George was on board with, simply because he did a whole blog post on dragon lore like out of nowhere, and he said, "My dragons are creatures of the sky. They fly and can cross mountains and plains, cover hundreds of miles, but they don't unless their riders take them there. They are not nomadic. During the heyday of Valyria, there were 40 dragon-riding families with hundreds of dragons amongst them. But aside from our Targaryens, all of them stayed close to the freehold and the lands of long summer. From time to time, a dragon rider might visit Volantis or another Valyrian colony, even settle there for a few years, but never permanently. Think about it. If dragons were nomadic, they would have overrun half of Essos, and the Doom would only have killed a few of them. Similarly, the dragons of Westeros seldom wander far from Dragonstone. Elsewise, after 300 years, we would have dragons all over the realm, and every noble house would have a few. The 3 wild dragons mentioned in Fire and Blood have lairs on Dragonstone. The rest can be found in the Dragon Pit at King's Landing or in the deep caverns under the Dragonmont. Luke flies Arax to Storm's End and Jace to Winterfell, yes, but the dragons would not have flown there on their own, save under very special circumstances. You won't find dragons hunting the Riverlands or the Reach or the Vale, or roaming the Northlands or the Mountains of Dorne. Fantasy needs to be grounded. It's not simply a license to do anything you like. Smaug and Toothless may both be dragons, but they should never be confused. Ignore canon and the world you've created comes apart like tissue paper. So I don't think he was on board with this. It sounds like he was kind of pissed about it. I mean, like, it is what it is. I love season 2 of House of the Dragon. I did not like Nettles being cut. But when characters are cut or merged, as long as those character roles are replaced with a meaningful story that covers all of the effects that role has on the story, and it does not cause butterfly effects in the story for years, I'm cool with it. As long as it's not like when Sansa was merged with Jane Poole just to be tortured more by Ramsay Bolton, or like Lady Stoneheart just being cut from a Game of Thrones. But anyway, we will revisit this when the time comes. For all we know, this scene is extended with Nettles hopping out saying, "Excuse me, that's my dragon." But I don't know, guys. With Alys Rivers doing all the character work for Daemon, I think the Nettles ship has sailed. But what do you think? As always, thanks for watching. Okay, my sweet summer children, have a good day.